Hello, I am Heo Young-hoon, a Feng Shui scholar at the Oriental Culture Academy. Today is the third installment of the Sympathetic Resonance special series. I will begin the lecture on the topic of the limitations of prosperity resulting from sympathetic resonance and how many generations prosperity extends. Recently, I have been conducting in-depth research into what exactly acts as a medium for sympathetic resonance to occur at ancestral burial sites and influence the prosperity of descendants. In the process, I came to examine genetic mechanisms in detail, and surprisingly, within these biological principles, I was able to find a clear answer and logic regarding the limitations of the prosperity of descendants that I has experienced firsthand and advocated in the field. In the field of Feng Shui, there is fierce debate regarding the limits of prosperity for descendants, with arguments ranging from great-great-grandchildren to grandparents, each adhering to their own perspective. 저는 그동안 풍수에서 후손 발복의 한계는 어디까지인지 분명히 밝혀왔습니다. Based on extensive field experience and Feng Shui classics, it was emphasized that it is appropriate to examine the paternal lineage, at least 4 great-great-grandfathers with exceptional cases of 5 to 6 generations, and the maternal lineage at least up to the maternal grandparents. As I have recently been tracing the nature of sympathetic resonance through genetics, I would like to summarize how my past claims are verified and validated by modern genetics, focusing on 2 major key limitations. First, the limit of good fortune is the 4th to 5th generation ancestors on the paternal side. This is the part where the on-site liver acid assessment and autosomal half-life coincide. My assertion regarding the limits of paternal prosperity is the point where the principles of Feng Shui classics, the results of actual field investigations, and the autosomal half-lives of modern genetics align precisely. The principled limit for the prosperity of descendants established by the Centennial Feng Shui Research Institute is up to the 4th generation of the great-great-grandfather. This aligns with the fact that Ho Sun Sin's Jirisin Biop, a subject of the geomancy examination during the Joseon dynasty, specified that burial sites dating back to the great-great-grandfather and great-grandfather should be examined differentially, applying the 4 generations up to the great-great-grandfather as the valid range for blessings. I have strictly applied this standard to actual on-site inspections as well. In a post on the Baekneon Feng Shui Research Institute Cafe, titled Analysis of Advantages and Disadvantages of Presidential Election Candidates' Ancestral Graves, I analyzed the ancestral graves of major presidential candidates and quantified the advantages and disadvantages based on the number of generations. At the time, I differentiated the assessments by stating that regarding the ancestral lineage, candidates Lee Jae-myung and Kim Moon-soo were evaluated as superior because they belonged to the great-great-grandfather generation, which is the principled limit for good fortune, while candidate Lee Jun-seok was evaluated as low because he belonged to the 5th generation, which is an exceptional standard. Furthermore, adding that there remains room for factors to influence the judgment of advantage or disadvantage, such as the fact that it has not been definitively proven whether the auspicious site known as candidate Lee Jae-myung's great-great-grandparents' grave is actually his great-grandmother's grave. It was made clear that if the auspicious site is revealed to be the 3rd generation of the great-grandfather, rather than the 4th generation of the great-great-grandfather, additional points should be awarded because the power of blessings is greater due to the closer generational relationship. My long-held firm assertion that while the principles of Feng Shui classics define the scope as 4 generations, based on field experience, the range should exceptionally be extended to at least 5 generations, surprisingly matches the autosomal dilution ratio in genetics exactly. The general genes that determine our appearance and constitution decrease by exactly half with each generation. The proportion of genes shared with ancestors is 50% for parents, but it drops to 25%, starting from the 2nd generation of grandparents and 12.5% for the 3rd generation of great-grandparents. It plummets to about 6.25% when reaching the 4th generation of great-great-grandparents, which is the principal limit, and becomes extremely negligible at the level of 1 to 3%. When reaching the 5th and 6th generations, which is the exceptional limit, my judgment in past presidential candidate analyses to differentiate scores for the 4th and 5th generations of great-great-grandparents and to apply a higher weight to the third generation of great-grandparents has been proven to be the result of identifying, through Feng Shui, the genetic critical point where biological energy is halved from 12.5% to 6.25% and then to 3.1%. Second, it is the limit of good fortune for 2 generations of maternal grandparents. This is the alignment of yin-yang theory and mitochondrial DNA. I have consistently argued through posts on the Baekneon Feng Shui Research Institute, K-Feng and elsewhere, that if a vital energy point cannot be found at a burial site of a paternal ancestor, one must also examine the maternal ancestor furthermore. Even with the limitations of tracing genealogies, one must verify at least 2 generations of maternal grandparents before determining whether good fortune will arise. Since the foundation of Feng Shui is the theory of yin and yang, if the paternal lineage is viewed as yang, the maternal lineage corresponds to yin. While bloodline is passed down through the paternal line, prosperity does not distinguish between the paternal and maternal lines. Therefore, as seen in the case of the tomb of Master Jeon Jwamyeong in Gumi, North Gyeongsang, province, a site of Useonryong, the auspicious energy of the maternal side also exerts a tremendous influence on descendants. Jeon Jwamyeong is the father-in-law of Yoon Ho, the prince consort of Yongwon, who served as prime minister during the reign of King Seongjong, the maternal grandfather of Kim Gye-u, who served as vice minister of public works during the reign of King Jeongjong, and the maternal grandfather of Queen Jonghyun, King Jeongjong's mother. Therefore, it is my long-held belief that discussing the prosperity of descendants while excluding the maternal lineage, which exerts a powerful influence in the present era, is nothing more than a half-baked calculation. This claim of mine is perfectly consistent with the laws of maternal inheritance and the characteristics of mitochondrial DNA that I have recently examined. Mitochondrial DNA, the core organelle that generates energy within the cells of offspring, is inherited 100% solely from the mother, and that mother, in turn, receives it from the maternal grandmother. In addition, maternal grandparents share 25% of their genes with you, exactly the same as paternal grandparents. In other words, due to the maternal nature of the lineage not being passed down through men, the structure is designed to unleash energy, most directly and powerfully upon the descendants of the current generation, rather than extending far back through the generations above. The intuition and assertion that if a propitious site cannot be found in the paternal line, one must verify the auspiciousness of the site of the second-generation maternal grandparents has been clearly proven by the existence of a biological hotline. In conclusion, I will summarize the wisdom of traditional Feng Shui proven by life science. The threshold for good fortune, namely 4 to 5 generations of paternal ancestors and 2 generations of maternal ancestors, which has been established through cafe posts and applied in the field for several years, was by no means a vague rule of thumb. These criteria, based on the wisdom presented in traditional Feng Shui classics such as the Jirisin Biop, were a rational and scientific conclusion that matched with almost no error when applied to the DNA, half-life, and mitochondrial inheritance laws of modern genetics, which were discovered through recent research into the nature of sympathetic resonance. The concepts of sympathetic resonance and blessings in traditional Feng Shui are by no means superstitions or outdated customs. It is an advanced life science in which our ancestors hundreds of years ago grasped the continuity of life and the law of conservation of vital energy without the need for a microscope. Going forward, we will thoroughly exclude vague assumptions or subjective interpretations that force a fit, and instead approach Feng Shui, research and field surveys based on objective standards that have been cross-verified by fieldwork and science. This article is a Feng Shui interpretation based on my extensive field experience and literature review. Therefore, I would like to make it clear that there may be differences in opinion with that of mainstream geneticists, studying natural sciences, or experts in other fields. That concludes today's lecture. In the next part 4, I will return to you with the topics of the mechanism of sympathetic resonance, and whether good fortune is achieved solely through the mind. Thank you.